What if the body doesn't move, because no one ever spoke to the person inside it? The room had learned to breathe without hope. It was large enough to swallow sound, perched 50 floors above Manhattan, wrapped in glass and silence. Machines hummed in soft, obedient rhythms. Lights stayed dim, never too bright, never too warm. Everything was calibrated, temperature at 72 degrees, air filtered, oxygen steady. Perfect conditions for a life that hadn't changed in 20 years. Evelyn Carter sat at the center of it all. Still. Always still. Her wheelchair faced the skyline, though no one could say she was looking at it. Her eyes were open, but distant, like windows in a house no one had entered in decades. Once, those eyes had commanded boardrooms, redirected billion-dollar decisions with a single glance. Now they reflected only the slow drift of clouds over the Hudson. Doctors had come and gone. Specialists with framed degrees and careful voices. They spoke in long words and short conclusions. Neural damage. Irreversible pathways. Stable condition. The language of acceptance disguised as expertise. Over time, their visits became quieter. Less frequent. Eventually, they stopped trying to fix anything at all. They adjusted. Maintained. Preserved. Like caretakers of a museum piece too valuable to lose, but too broken to restore. Outside the room, assistants moved with rehearsed precision. Tablets in hand. Voices low. No sudden sounds. No surprises. The CEO still existed, technically. Her name still moved markets. Her company still grew. But inside this room, time had folded in on itself. 20 years. Not a single step. Not a single word. Not even a flicker strong enough to rewrite the verdict written over her life. Until the elevator doors opened on the ground floor that morning, and someone stepped in who didn't know the rules. Marcus Hale shifted the weight of the insulated delivery bag on his shoulder as he walked into the marble lobby. His boots carried a faint trace of dust from the street. His jacket had seen too many winters to pretend otherwise. He didn't belong in a building like this. Not by their standards. The receptionist barely looked up at first. Just another delivery. Another interruption in a place that valued control above all else. Leave it there, she said, gesturing toward the polished counter without meeting his eyes. Marcus nodded. Calm. Respectful. He'd heard that tone before. He set the bag down gently, like it mattered. Because to him, it always did. Everything did. As he turned to leave, something made him pause. Not a sound. Not a movement. Something quieter than that. A feeling. He glanced toward the private elevator at the far end of the lobby. The one no one used without clearance. The one that led somewhere above his world. His eyes lingered for just a second longer than necessary. Like he noticed something no one had pointed out. Like a shift in the air that didn't belong to marble or glass. Then the doors opened. And without knowing why, he stepped inside. The elevator moved without sound, smooth as a hell breath, rising past floors Marcus had never seen and never expected to. There were no buttons pressed, no instructions given, just a quiet ascent that felt less like a decision and more like a current pulling him upward. He stood still, one hand resting loosely against the strap of his delivery bag, watching the numbers change in soft, glowing increments. 10. 20. 30. The air inside felt different the higher it went. Thinner somehow, not in oxygen, but in warmth. By the time it reached the top floor, the silence had weight. The doors opened slowly, revealing a hallway that did not echo footsteps. Thick carpet. Muted lighting. Walls that held their secrets close. A woman in a tailored suit stood waiting, her posture precise, her expression unreadable. She had been expecting someone, just not him. Her eyes moved over him once, quick and efficient, cataloging everything from his worn jacket to the dust on his boots. "Delivery is not authorized on this level," she said, her voice controlled, not unkind but distant. Marcus nodded once, respectful. "I figured that," he replied, his tone calm, steady. "But the elevator brought me here anyway." For a moment, something shifted in her gaze. Not confusion. Something closer to calculation. She glanced briefly at the open elevator behind him, then back at him, as if trying to reconcile a system that did not make mistakes with a man who clearly did not belong. "Who are you here for?" she asked. Marcus hesitated, not because he did not have an answer, but because the question felt wrong. Like asking a name for something he had not yet seen. "I do not know," he said simply. The woman studied him a second longer, then stepped aside. "Do not touch anything," she said, turning toward a set of double doors at the end of the hall. He followed at a respectful distance. No rush. No curiosity in his movements. Just presence. The doors opened into a room that did not feel like part of the building. It felt separate. Contained. Like stepping into a place where time had stopped and refused to move again. Marcus slowed without realizing it. Not from instruction. From instinct. The light was softer here, filtered through sheer curtains that softened the city beyond into a blur of pale motion. Machines lined the edges of the room, their screens glowing faintly, their sounds steady and controlled. And at the center, her. Evelyn Carter. He did not know her name yet, but he felt the gravity of it before anyone said a word. She sat facing the window, perfectly still, her posture supported by precision, her presence held in place by everything around her. There was no struggle in her. No visible tension. Just absence. The kind that filled a room more than noise ever could. Marcus stopped a few steps inside. He did not speak. Did not move closer. Something about the air told him this was not a place for sudden actions. The woman beside him began to speak, her voice slipping into practiced explanation, but Marcus did not hear the words. His attention was not on the machines. Not on the monitors. Not on the systems that surrounded her like quiet guardians. It was on her face. On the smallest details no one had mentioned. The way her eyes held light, but not focus. The way her breathing was steady, but detached. The way the room seemed to orbit around her stillness. He tilted his head slightly, almost imperceptibly. Like he was listening for something beneath the silence. And for the first time in 20 years, something in that room felt noticed. The assistant's voice continued somewhere behind him, explaining timelines, diagnoses, years of consultations, but Marcus let the words pass through him like background noise. They sounded practiced, repeated too many times to carry weight anymore. What stayed with him was the stillness. Not the kind that came from rest. The kind that came from being left behind. He took one step closer, slow enough that it did not disturb the rhythm of the room. Then another. His boots made almost no sound against the carpet, but even if they had, it would not have mattered. Nothing here reacted to noise anymore. Everything reacted to expectation, and expectation had long since been removed. "That is Ms. Carter," the woman said, her voice quieter now, as if the space demanded it. "She has not responded to external stimuli in over 2 decades. Minimal neural activity. Fully assisted function. Stable." Marcus nodded faintly, but his eyes did not leave Evelyn. Stable. The word sat wrong with him. It felt like calling a locked door open just because it had not moved in years. He shifted the strap of his bag off his shoulder and set it down gently by the wall. No rush. No announcement. Just a small adjustment, like someone settling in instead of preparing to leave. The woman noticed. "You can leave the package there," she said, a hint of impatience slipping through her otherwise controlled tone. Marcus did not answer right away. He stepped closer, stopping at a respectful distance from Evelyn's chair. Not too close. Not distant either. Just within a space that felt human. "How long has it been since someone talked to her?" he asked quietly. The question landed differently than the others that had filled this room over the years. The woman frowned slightly. "She receives constant monitoring," she replied. "Verbal input has been tested extensively. It does not produce measurable results." Marcus nodded again, as if he expected that answer. "That is not what I asked." he said, still calm, still steady. The woman hesitated. For a moment, the room held something new. Not movement. Not sound. A pause that had not been scripted. Marcus looked at Evelyn again. Not at the machines. Not at the medical data displayed in soft, glowing lines. Just her. He lowered himself slowly into the chair across from her, the movement deliberate, unhurried, like sitting down at a kitchen table at the end of a long day. His hands rested loosely on his knees. Open. Relaxed. He did not reach for her. Did not test anything. Did not try to prove a point. He simply sat. The silence stretched. It was not uncomfortable. It was unfamiliar. The kind that did not demand to be filled. Marcus tilted his head slightly, studying her face not as a case, not as a condition, but as someone he had just met and had not yet figured out. You know, he said softly, his voice low enough that it barely disturbed the air. My daughter used to do this. The woman behind him shifted, confused. Marcus did not look back. When she was little, he continued, she would get real quiet when something scared her. Not loud scared. The kind that makes you go still. Like if you move, it gets worse. He paused, letting the words settle without forcing them forward. Doctors said she was fine too, he added with a faint, almost invisible smile. Said she would talk when she was ready. He leaned back slightly, not breaking eye level with Evelyn. They kept trying to get her to respond, he said. Asking questions. Running tests. Waiting for something to change. His voice softened even more. But nobody ever just sat with her. The room did not change. The machines did not react. The city outside kept moving like it always had. But something subtle shifted in the air between them. Not visible. Not measurable. Just different. Marcus did not reach for it. He stayed exactly where he was. Present. Patient. Like he had nowhere else to be. The assistant shifted her weight again, her heels barely making a sound against the floor, but the movement felt louder than it should have in a room that had grown used to stillness. She glanced toward the monitoring screens, as if expecting some kind of response, some measurable reaction to justify what she was witnessing, but the lines remained steady, unchanged, indifferent. Marcus did not look at them. He leaned forward. Slightly, resting his forearms loosely on his knees, his posture relaxed, grounded, like he had done this before in a different place, under a different kind of silence. You ever notice, he said quietly, his voice carrying just enough to exist, how people stop talking to you when they think you cannot answer back? He let the question hang there, not expecting anything, not demanding anything. Just placing it gently into the space between them. His eyes stayed on Evelyn's, not searching for movement, not waiting for proof. Just acknowledging. They start talking around you. He continued softer now. About you. Over you. Like you are already gone. Behind him, the assistant opened her mouth as if to interrupt, then stopped. Something in his tone made interruption feel unnecessary. Or maybe unwelcome. Marcus exhaled slowly, a quiet breath that matched the rhythm of the room without trying to change it. My little girl, he said. She used to sit at the kitchen table and stare at her cereal when something bothered her. Spoon in her hand. Milk getting warm. Not a word. A faint smile touched his face, barely there, more memory than expression. At first, I kept asking questions. What is wrong? Did something happen at school? Are you okay? He shook his head gently. But questions did not help. They just made her go deeper into that quiet place. The assistant's gaze shifted from Marcus to Evelyn, then back again, uncertain now, as if something in the room had changed but she could not define it. Marcus leaned back slightly, giving the space room to breathe. So one day I stopped asking, he said. I just sat across from her. Same chair. Same table. Did not say much. His voice dropped even lower, almost a whisper now. Took about 10 minutes. Maybe 15. Then she looked up at me like she had just remembered I was there. He paused. The machines continued their soft, steady hum. The city outside moved in distant silence. Nothing dramatic. Nothing sudden. Just time passing like it always had. Marcus tilted his head again, studying Evelyn not for signs of change, but for signs of presence. "You do not look gone to me," he said quietly. "You look like someone who has been waiting a long time for the noise to stop." The words settled into the room without resistance. No alarms. No data shifts. Just a different kind of wait. The assistant swallowed subtly, her posture no longer as rigid as before. Marcus did not notice. Or if he did not react. His focus remained steady, unwavering in its calm. He adjusted his position slightly, one hand resting open against his leg, the other hanging loosely at his side. No tension. No urgency. "I am not going to ask you to move," he said, his voice even, gentle. "I am not going to ask you to prove anything." A small pause. "I am just going to sit here." And he did. No performance. No expectation. Just presence. And for the first time in that room, the silence did not feel empty. It felt shared. Time did not announce itself in that room. It did not tick or echo. It simply stretched, quiet and unnoticed, as Marcus remained where he was, his presence steady, unchanging. The assistant eventually stepped back, not out of instruction, but because staying too close began to feel like interrupting something she could not quite understand. She moved toward the far side of the room, near the monitors, her eyes still flicking between the screens and the man who had stopped trying to fix what everyone else had already given up on. Marcus did not look away from Evelyn. He did not fill the silence with more words right away. He let it settle, let it breathe, the way he had learned to do long before this moment. Outside, the city moved through late morning, traffic flowing in quiet patterns far below, sunlight shifting slightly as clouds drifted across the sky. Inside, nothing visibly changed. And yet, something felt different. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket slowly, carefully, as if even that small motion deserved respect in a room that had grown used to stillness. He pulled out a small, folded piece of paper, worn at the edges from being handled too many times. He did not rush to open it. He held it between his fingers for a moment, glancing down at it with a softness that did not belong to this place. "My daughter drew this a few weeks ago," he said quietly, his voice low and even. "She likes to draw when she cannot find the words." He unfolded the paper gently and placed it on the small table beside Evelyn, not too close, not too far. Just within her line of sight, if sight was something she still followed. The drawing was simple. A small figure holding hands with a taller one, both standing under a wide sun that took up too much space on the page. The lines were uneven. The colors pressed hard into the paper like the child who made it did not trust the pencil to leave a mark unless she insisted. "That is me," Marcus added softly, nodding toward the taller figure. "And that is her?" He did not point directly. He let the drawing speak for itself. The assistant watched from across the room, her arms no longer crossed, her posture no longer rigid. There was something about the way he introduced the drawing that made it feel less like an object and more like an invitation. Marcus leaned back again, his hands returning to rest loosely where they had been before. "She told me once," he continued, "that sometimes people get stuck inside their heads because it is the only place that still feels safe." His eyes remained on Evelyn, not searching, not expecting, just present. "She said it is like sitting in a quiet room where nobody can reach you, even if they try." He paused, letting the words settle without pushing them forward. The machines continued their steady hum, the soft glow of the monitors unchanged. But the room itself felt less distant, less sealed. Marcus shifted slightly in his seat, just enough to stay comfortable, not enough to break the calm he had built. "I do not know what your quiet room looks like," he said gently, "but I am not here to take it away." A small breath. Slow. Measured. "I am just here so you are not in it alone." The words did not echo. They did not need to. They rested in the space between them, simple and unforced. And then, something almost invisible happened. Not a movement anyone could call proof. Not a signal any machine would register. Just a faint change, so subtle it could have been missed entirely. The light in Evelyn's eyes shifted. Not fully. Not clearly. But enough that, for a fraction of a second, it looked less like reflection, and more like awareness. The shift was so small it almost disappeared the moment it happened, like a ripple on water that no one was watching closely enough to name. The assistant's breath caught before she could stop it, her eyes snapping back to the monitors as if the machines might confirm what she thought she saw. The lines did not change. The numbers stayed steady. No alarms. No alerts. Nothing that would justify the sudden tightness in her chest. Marcus did not look at the screens. He had not seen data move, but he had felt something else. Not movement. Not recovery. Presence. He leaned forward just slightly, not enough to intrude, just enough to stay connected to the moment before it slipped away. His voice, when he spoke again, was even softer than before, like he understood that whatever had shifted did not need pressure. "There you are," he said gently, not as a discovery, but as a recognition. The words settled in the space between them without urgency. He did not repeat them. Did not ask for confirmation. He simply accepted the possibility that something inside her had heard him. Across the room, the assistant stepped closer, slower this time, careful not to disturb whatever had formed. Her heels felt too loud now, even when they barely touched the floor. She stopped near the monitors again, her eyes moving between Evelyn and the man sitting across from her like he belonged there. Marcus reached out, not toward Evelyn, but toward the small drawing he had placed on the table. He adjusted it slightly, turning it just a few degrees so it faced her more directly. A simple motion. Unimportant to anyone else. But intentional. "She always makes the sun too big," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Says it is because people forget how warm it is supposed to feel." His fingers lingered on the edge of the paper for a moment before he pulled his hand back, returning to stillness. The room did not respond in any measurable way. But the silence, it was no longer empty. It held something fragile now. Something new. Marcus shifted his gaze back to Evelyn, his expression unchanged, calm, grounded. "You do not have to do anything," he said softly. "Not for me. Not for them." A brief pause. "Just stay right there." The assistant glanced again at the monitors, searching for evidence, for proof that could be explained, documented, understood. But there was none. Only the same steady lines. The same stable readings. The same conclusion they had trusted for years. And yet, it did not feel the same anymore. Marcus leaned back slightly, settling into the chair as if he had accepted that this moment was not his to control. His hands rested loosely again, open, patient. He did not rush to fill the silence. He let it exist, let it hold whatever had begun. Seconds passed. Then more. Long enough that doubt could have returned. Long enough that the moment could have been dismissed as imagination. But then, it happened again. So small it almost hid from itself. The faintest tremor along Evelyn's fingertips. Not a full movement. Not even enough to shift her hand. Just a subtle, fleeting response, like something inside her had reached outward and then hesitated. The assistant froze. This time, she did not look at the monitors. She looked directly at Evelyn. Marcus did not react immediately. He did not lean in. Did not call it out. He let the moment exist without naming it, without turning it into something it was not ready to be. His voice, when it came again, was steady, quiet, certain. "It is okay," he said. "You are not alone anymore." And for the first time in 20 years, the stillness in that room did not feel permanent. It felt interrupted. The tremor did not repeat right away, and that made it easier to doubt. The assistant's eyes searched Evelyn's hand, waiting for it to happen again, for something clearer, something undeniable. But the fingers rested where they had always rested, quiet, composed, unchanged to anyone who had not been watching closely enough. The room held its breath without knowing it. Marcus did not move. He did not chase the moment or try to recreate it. He understood something the others did not. Whatever had just happened could not be forced forward. It had to be allowed to return on its own terms. He let the silence settle again, not empty, but expectant in a way that felt new. "You know," he said softly after a while, his voice calm, unhurried. "When my daughter first started talking again, it was not words." He leaned back slightly, his gaze still resting on Evelyn, steady and patient. "It was her hand," he continued. "Just a little twitch. Barely anything. If I blinked, I would have missed it." The assistant swallowed, her attention no longer divided between screens and protocol. She was listening now. Really listening. Marcus exhaled slowly, remembering. "I almost ignored it," he admitted. "Thought it was nothing. Just my mind trying to make something out of silence." He shook his head faintly. "But it was not nothing. It was her saying she was still there." The words settled into the room with a quiet weight. No machines reacted. No systems recalibrated. But something in the air shifted again, subtle, fragile, real. Marcus leaned forward just a fraction, not closing the distance, just honoring it. "If that was you just now," he said gently, "you do not have to do it again for anyone else." A small pause. "But I saw it." The assistant's breath caught again, softer this time, like she did not want to disturb what had been acknowledged. Marcus's eyes did not waver. He did not look for more. He did not demand proof. He simply stayed with what had already been given. Time passed. Seconds stretching into something longer. Outside, the light shifted again, a thin beam of sunlight slipping through the curtains and landing softly across the edge of the table, touching the corner of the drawing Marcus had placed there. The bright crayon sun seemed to glow a little stronger under the real one. Marcus noticed, but said nothing. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, Evelyn's fingers moved again. Not a tremor this time. Not as uncertain. The smallest curl inward, like the beginning of a thought trying to take shape. The assistant stepped forward before she could stop herself, then froze mid-step, afraid that even that slight movement might break whatever fragile thread had formed. Her eyes widened, her composure slipping just enough to reveal something she had not allowed herself in years. Hope. Marcus did not react outwardly. No sudden breath. No widened eyes. Just a quiet recognition that settled deeper into his posture. He nodded once, almost to himself, as if confirming something he had already believed. "That is it," he said softly. "You are doing just fine." His voice did not rise. It did not celebrate. It did not claim victory. It simply met the moment where it was. The assistant glanced at the monitors again, almost out of habit, but this time she did not expect them to explain anything. They remained unchanged, steady as ever, unaware of the shift that had taken place beyond their reach. Marcus leaned back once more, giving the moment space instead of pressure. "You do not need to rush," he added quietly. "You have had 20 years of silence. You can take your time coming back from it." The words lingered, gentle and unforced. And in that room, where nothing had changed for so long, something had finally begun, not loudly, not dramatically, but enough that it could no longer be ignored. The movement did not disappear this time. It stayed, faint but real, like a signal that had finally found a way through years of silence. Evelyn's fingers rested again, but not in the exact same way. There was a difference now, subtle enough that only someone who had been watching without expectation would notice. The assistant noticed. She stepped closer, slower than before, her breath measured as if she were afraid that even her presence could undo what had begun. Her training told her to document, to report, to call someone, but something deeper told her to stay quiet. To not interrupt. Marcus remained where he was, his posture unchanged, his presence steady like an anchor in a room that was learning how to shift again. He did not lean forward. He did not speak immediately. He allowed the moment to settle into itself, to become something that did not need to be proven. The sunlight had moved further across the table now, warming the paper with the drawing, casting a soft glow that reached just to the edge of Evelyn's hand. The colors looked brighter under it. The oversized sun in the drawing almost felt intentional now. Marcus glanced at it briefly, then back at her. "You see that?" he said quietly, not pointing, not insisting. "She always says the sun is there even when people forget to look for it." His voice was gentle, almost conversational, like he was not talking to a patient, but to someone who had simply been quiet for too long. The assistant stood just behind him now, close enough to see the smallest details, her eyes fixed on Evelyn's hand, then her face, then back again. She was not searching for confirmation anymore. She was witnessing. Marcus shifted slightly in his chair, the smallest adjustment to stay present without becoming intrusive. "I am going to head out in a bit," he said softly, the words landing without pressure. "Got a few more deliveries to make." A pause. "Not long. Just enough. But you do not need me to stay for this," he added. "You already started." The room did not resist the idea. It accepted it. Marcus reached for the drawing again, not to take it back, but to slide it just a little closer to Evelyn's side of the table. A quiet offering. Something to remain after he was gone. His fingers moved carefully, deliberately, then returned to rest. The assistant watched him, something unspoken passing through her expression, a question she did not ask. Marcus stood up slowly, not abrupt, not final. Just a natural movement, like someone leaving a place they had been welcomed into without needing permission. He did not step away right away. He remained there for a moment longer, looking at Evelyn not for change, but for connection. "You can take your time," he said, his voice low, steady. "Nobody is rushing you anymore." Then he turned, picking up his bag from where he had left it by the wall. The weight of it settled back onto his shoulder like it always did. Familiar. Grounding. The assistant instinctively moved aside, giving him space, her eyes still flicking back to Evelyn every few seconds, as if afraid to look away completely. Marcus walked toward the door at the same unhurried pace he had entered, his footsteps soft, his presence leaving the room without taking anything from it. Just before he reached the threshold, something shifted again. Not in the machines. Not in the data. In her. Evelyn's hand moved, just slightly, but clearly this time. A slow, deliberate motion of her fingers toward the edge of the table. Toward the drawing. The assistant froze, her eyes widening, but she did not speak. She did not move. She understood now. Some moments were not meant to be interrupted. Marcus paused at the doorway, not turning around right away. Like he had felt it without needing to see it. Then, after a quiet second, he gave the smallest nod to himself and continued walking. And behind him, in a room that had not changed in 20 years, a woman who had been unreachable, reached back. The door closed without a sound, and yet the room did not return to what it had been. It could not. Something had crossed a line that silence had protected for 20 years, and now that line no longer held. The assistant stood where she was, her body still, but her attention completely altered. She was no longer watching for protocol. She was watching for life. Evelyn's fingers rested near the edge of the table, closer to the drawing than they had ever been. The movement had been small, but it had been chosen. Not random. Not reflex. Chosen. The assistant took a slow breath, careful, controlled, as if she were learning a new way to exist inside this room. Her eyes lifted from Evelyn's hand to her face, searching not for a miracle, but for continuity. For anything that suggested the moment had not passed. And then, there it was. Not in her hands. Not in her posture. In her eyes. The faintest shift in focus. Not fully present. Not fully aware. But no longer completely distant. It was as if something inside her had turned slightly toward the world instead of away from it. The assistant did not speak. She did not call anyone. She did not reach for her device. For the first time since she had been assigned to this room, she understood that some changes were too fragile to survive explanation. The sunlight had moved further now, warming more of the table, touching the edge of Evelyn's sleeve. The drawing remained where Marcus had left it, its bright colors quiet but persistent. Evelyn's fingers, after a long pause, moved again. Slow. Deliberate. The smallest shift of her index finger brushing against the paper. Not gripping it. Not lifting it. Just touching it. The assistant's eyes filled before she could stop them, but she did not wipe them away. She let them stay, as quiet as everything else in the room. Down in the lobby, the world continued as it always had. People moved. Phones rang. Elevators opened and closed. Marcus stepped out into it without hesitation, his pace steady, his posture unchanged. He did not look back. Not because he did not care, but because he did not need to. He had never come there to see the ending. Only to be present for the beginning. He adjusted the strap on his shoulder and stepped out onto the street, the air cooler than before, carrying the distant sounds of the city moving forward. Another delivery waited. Another moment. Another place where someone might need nothing more than to be seen. High above, in a room that had forgotten what change felt like, something continued to unfold without him. Evelyn's hand rested now against the drawing, her fingers no longer entirely still. Her eyes, though not fully focused, held on to something